Hey everybody, this is Joshua. We are listening to PVD Horror. Today we have writer and podcaster Raymond Johnson on. Big time fan of his work. So here we go. Did I do the and sound stupid?
No, it sounds fine.
Oh, thank God we don't do anything live. This is Joshua.
Hey, this is Dave.
This is Brandon.
This is Ray Johnson.
And you are listening to PVD Horror.
Hi, this is Bailey Edwards, and I play Jacob in the movie Mothers of Monsters.
And I am Tusia. I'm the writer and director of Mom, Mothers of Monsters. And tune in to PVD Horror. Shut off the lights, crank up the volume, and enjoy.
Ray came in with the sex vibes.
It's all Johnny Fever and Venus Flytrap for me.
There you go.
This is Ray Johnson. I like that.
Thank God you got a podcast. At least one of us will be professional this time.
I'm far from it.
So I'll start off. Ray, thanks for getting in touch with us. And we've been going back and forth with emails and stuff. I'm so happy to have you on. So I know you're a big monster movie fan. So
Absolutely.
right out the gate, favorite movies, go.
Oh man, if you really got to go to movies, The Thing by John Carpenter. I have to say The Blob, 1988. I love that. You seeing a kid get eaten by a monster is something you don't ever see on screen, and the kid getting melted in the sewers. Fantastic. But I grew up on Godzilla, the Wolfman. I grew up watching the old monster movie creep shows in the evenings with the horror host. For me, it was WPXI, Chilly Billy with Chiller Theater. So I have watched everything under the sun since I was, the smallest kid you could imagine. I would stay up all night long. And I was so mad when Chiller Theater got displaced by SNL. We kept it on for 2 years when Saturday Night Live first came out. We kept our time slot because Chiller Theater was so popular, and they finally kicked it out. And I was so mad I had to stay up till like 1 o'clock in the morning to watch Chiller Theater then. So I've watched monster movies my entire life. I mean, from day one, I can't remember ever not watching monster movies.
Ray, I knew I was gonna like you with the sex voice with your intro, but now that you're saying you're also into kid murder, I'm even more of a fan of you. So thank you for that.
Well, not in real life. I mean, I've experienced. Yeah, I've seen it enough. I don't need to have that, in real life.
No, but in movies, watching a monster and like you always think the kids are going to be safe, but when you see them go for it, it's like, whoa, this is not what I was expecting. Right. Just throws you for a loop.
Absolutely. And that's what gets me is like in the remake of Dawn of the Dead, like they start off perfectly great. There's a little kid that comes in and murders the guy and all that. I'm thinking, man, this is going to be not that I don't love the movie, but this is going to be fantastic. There's going to be zombie kids running around and that's it. The one little kid and then the weak ass baby that's in there, with the, it was just weak. It was just weak. So, I couldn't take it after that. I was like, come on. I just want to see kids in the zombie mix. It's never children in there. So
I was kind of shocked that both of the It remakes kind of just went off with killing the kids, like before like the Georgie kill was off screen. It just, before the screen kind of just went black. And then for the remake, he just takes his arm off and then pulls them in. I was just kind of like shocked on like seeing that, especially for today.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a big problem with today. Like I have a lot of issues with today horror because the movies are like, honestly, they're PG-13. I mean, I don't know how you can be scary. Like people talked about how great The Conjuring was when it first came out. And I'm not saying it wasn't a good movie, but it wasn't a scary movie. It wasn't a horror movie. To me, it was like I could have brought my kids in and, the 8 and 7 and 6, sit down and watch this with some popcorn and they'd have been fine with it. And, for adults, I just need something with more bite to it, more edge. And I don't see it nowadays like I did.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. When the arm got ripped off, I was like, yeah, that's it. That's what you need to see. Not to sound like I'm a psycho. Here we go.
So when you were talking about monster movies, so I listened to your podcast as well, and there's a story that I heard. Can you tell us about the time you went to see The Fly 2 and The Armchair?
In The Armchair, did I tell you that part too? Did I say that? Yeah. When
it's weird that you kept The Armchair. So go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. my best friend is he's not a horror fan at all. And we went and saw like Night of the Living Dead, and I had to drop him off. He had to walk up a hill in the dark one night. And he's like, I curse you forever for making me watch that movie. And then walk up this hill in the dark, and there's this dog making this weird noise. And it scared him pissless. So, I said, well, now The Fly 2's out. We both like The Fly. We got to go see The Fly 2. And of course, we go to the theater, and we're in the theater, and I'm like, this is pretty good. I like this movie. And there's a scene in it. I'm sure you've seen it. We're talking about here, and most people will know, so I'm not spoiling anything. But there's a guy that he falls down, and an elevator comes down and crushes his head. And in the theater, I'm like, yeah, he killed him. He pushed his. That was great. And I ripped the armchair literally off of the chair, and I was holding it in my hand. I was like, holy hell, I've got the armchair. And my friend's looking at me. Sean's like, what are you going to do now? And I'm like, well, I'll just slip it back on here, and maybe they won't notice. And then I was like, maybe I should take it home with me and keep it as a souvenir, because that that'd be like, this is the time I saw The Fly 2. That would be great.
That's awesome.
I just wanted to know, what movie theater were you at when you ripped the arm of the chair?
We were in Monroeville, Pennsylvania.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And in fact, I like to go to Monroeville just because of the ties to the the zombie genre. Yeah. So that's where we were at. And I can't think of the name of the theater off the top of my head. I'm getting too old right now.
That's great though. That's awesome. I've been there myself too. I went to the mall over there because they had one of their I think it was a Horror Hound weekend a long time ago. They had in Monroeville, so that was kind of cool.
And I've been to a couple Comic Cons in Monroeville, so yeah, I'm pretty familiar with the place up there.
Nice.
Yep.
That's awesome. So here's a question: being a funeral director, has that helped you in your writing at all?
It's good. I'm going to put it like this: yes and no, but not in the way that you would expect. And if you ever want to get into this, we can talk about it. But I don't know what you feel about like real life paranormal activity, but we live in Rhode Island. It's like the hub of paranormal activity. Well, I don't want to come across as a nut, but I tell you, we've experienced it. We literally moved into, when I first started film directing, we lived out in the state of Delaware, right outside the city of Dover. There's Camden, Wyoming. And we moved into a house right behind the funeral home. And we had lived in another home right adjacent to it, but he wanted to tear that down and make a parking lot. So we ended up moving to the one right behind it. Now, what we didn't know was that the people that owned the house was actually a church, and they used that as their office. And they had like really, really horrible activity for years. And they got to a point where the one pastor literally went through the house and performed an exorcism in rooms, or whatever you want to call it, a cleansing. And we had no idea any of that happened. And when we moved in, everything was okay for a little bit, but we started having weird things occur. My wife would see shadow people or shadow things. We would have huge crashes, like glass shattering all over the basement. Go downstairs and look, nothing had happened, nothing out of place. And we had kids that were really young at the time. I've got 5 kids. We just adopted a couple, so we have young ones again. And so our young one was like 6 years old, and the oldest one was like 9. And the young one would always come into our bed, and he would climb in at night so he wasn't alone. And to get in, he would like walk around the bed from one side to the other till he could find a spot that he could climb in. And he would do this all the time. Well, we finally got him where he was staying in his room, but we still had like somebody coming into the room at night. We would think it was him, and I'd be like, Fane, go to bed. And then they would leave the room. And they never left the bed. He was there. So we would have this, whatever you want to call it, it seemed like a little kid walking around our bed. And then I would have some bizarre issues. Like I told my wife, I said, something is touching me in bed at night, and it rubs its arm or hands down my leg. And I said, I'm not going to turn around and look. I want you to look. I'll wake you up. And she's like, I'm not going to look. And I said, no, I need you to do this. And it would stroke my leg. Like literally you would feel it stroking my leg. And so one night I poked her, and I was like, poke, it's there. Just look. And she's like, I'm not looking. And if I moved, it stopped. So we had that going on. And right before we moved out, I was downstairs and I was reading a book on my Kindle, and I was all alone. It was about 3 or 4 in the morning. I got home from work late, said I got to unwind, so I'm going to read a book. And I have tons of books. So Josh, if you like books, you would love, I had like a U-Haul take my books out when I moved. And dude, a library. Yeah, absolutely a library. And so I'm sitting downstairs, I'm reading this book, and on my bookshelf, I had this little like Arizona cow skull that my grandmother got me when I was a kid. It was a magnet. It was like one of my favorite things. And I had it sitting on my shelf. I always have knickknacks there. And I put my book down, my Kindle down, and I looked over, and the cow skull turned like this. And I said, well, okay, it turned right towards me. I said, I'm going to bed now. I'm going to bed. So that was it. I put the Kindle away, and I went upstairs and went to bed. And we had a lot of stuff like that in the house, just like all kinds of craziness before we finally moved out. that helps me more than being a funeral director, you know.
Do you associate that connection of these occurrences with the fact that you're a funeral director, though? Like, do you think maybe things get attached to you, or do you think it's totally just separate?
No, it's totally separate, because the last place I worked at, I lived at the funeral home. We never had anything happen. Okay. Prior to that, I lived in another house right by the funeral home. Nothing ever happened. And the only thing ever happened with my boss in Delaware was he literally said the only thing ever happened in paranormal wise was he literally saw the old funeral director walk down the steps one night when he was downstairs closing up for the evening. And he said that was the only time he ever saw anything. So even then, at the funeral home I worked at, we didn't really see or have anything paranormal happen to us. Okay. It was just that one place. Just that one place.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So I draw on that because, it was a freaky place.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. I am a very avid reader. Just ask the guys.
Yeah, some of those book covers actually have pages in them too. They're not all just for show.
You're such a douchebag.
Yeah. I know when I moved, we had so many books. We literally had to have a second U-Haul just for the books. And so, and then my boss was like, have you ever heard of a Kindle? And I'm like, I've got two and they're both filled up. I can't download another thing on those. So, and at this point I just flipped over to audio. Now I do is I just listen to stuff. So
yeah,
I feel bad because I shaved my beard up today. I was bushy and everything else. And now looking at you, I'm like, I could have been pulling it off, man.
We don't need competition with the beard. All right. Everybody knows I can that.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Because I had to cut mine off.
Yeah.
Don't even worry about that, Josh.
Yeah.
So what inspired you to start writing?
I've always written since I was a little kid. And I think one of my issues I had was I'll never forget when I found H.P. Lovecraft. I read everything I could. Like Shadow over Innsmouth was like the story that was like, oh my gosh, it was so eye-opening. I loved it. And I'll never forget I had a sixth grade teacher and we had to write a story. And I just sat down and I said, I'm going to write this story. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's about this lake and it's calling to this guy. And I wrote this whole thing out, turned it in. And then she failed me because she said I plagiarized it. And I'm like, show me where I stole this from. There's even the books I had read with H.P. Lovecraft, which it was really kind of based on with the themes and stuff. It didn't have anything to do with H.P. Lovecraft's material, nothing. It was just about this guy that gets called to this lake and he just can't resist and he goes out and he drowns. And that was it. She turned me off so bad. Like I would write stuff and never turn it in or let anybody see it. But I've always written. I've been doing this since as long as I can remember. I would draw pictures and I would write stuff with it. So it was a comic book thing for a while there where I would draw comic books and then it turned into just writing stories and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. What was it about H.P. Lovecraft in particular that you think drew you in?
Oh, you know what? It's the hopelessness. I mean, when you look at Lovecraft, there is no hope for humanity. You have to say, okay, no matter what happens, every time that we interact with these beings or whatever, it's all over with. We lose. There's no such thing as a hero in Lovecraft stories. So he comes out and he mows everybody down with the machine gun and we blow up some stuff and we're the winners. We don't do it. We lose every single time, and that's the way it would be if it was real. With Cthulhu, with Dagon, all those characters, elder gods, they are unfathomable to us. It's like an ant being God, and then we are the microbes to the ant, and then the humans are the elder ones to that ant. That's how far apart we are from them. And I just loved how there was never a chance for us, even though we tried, like with Shadow over Innsmouth, the hero, if you want to call him that, he escapes, but he doesn't get away. That was like, how great is that? He got away, but he didn't get away. I love the hopelessness of it because, in reality, if you got a guy in your house with a knife or a gun, 99% of the time, you aren't going to make it out. And it's realistic, and that's where I said Lovecraft really had the hopelessness down over everything else. He was like really my introduction to horror, even though I had like a huge book with not Edgar Allan Poe, but Edgar Allan Poe was another influence. But Alfred Hitchcock, where he had taken stories that he loved. And I just rebought the book not too long ago. From when I was a kid, I had read it. And it was like one of the first Blob stories that I'd ever read, and I was like, man, this is just awesome. So, there is no winning sometimes. And I like that about horror. If you really go at it, there is no winning at all. And if you do win, there's a horrible cost. Like I just watched Ready or Not. and I was kind of resisting it. I liked that movie way better than I thought I would.
Yeah,
just because
I had a similar experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, I don't know what you thought about it, but going into it, I thought I was just going to be this hokey, chase him through the house and, do this or that. And it wasn't like that at all. And my whole thing I loved about it was that there really were consequences for the deal that was made. I didn't like how that consequences were explored, at the ending of it. It could have been a little bit more gruesome rather than just what happened with them, but, because that's hard to explain to the police. And then everybody just, no, that doesn't work with the cops. So, but like I said, I love that movie way more than I had ever expected. So now I'm thinking, I hated Don't Breathe, but now I'm thinking I'll watch Hush and, maybe what's the one where they wear the mask and they go inside the house? Strangers.
Strangers. Yeah.
Yep.
So, that kind of maybe has opened it up for me again after watching that. Like I said, it wasn't like A+ material, but it was, it was good enough for me to say, hey, I can check out more of this stuff and maybe enjoy it. So
another film that kind of ties in with those films that you named. What did you think of You're Next?
I haven't had a chance to see that. And that's one of those ones where that's on after I watched that movie, I said, I'll check out You're Next because I know that the heroine does a pretty good job. She's pretty smart. And I like smart characters who fight back. I just haven't had a chance to rent the movie. I know about it and I know the whole storyline, but I still will go into being open-minded and see how it works out.
I just wanted to ask you, has there, as an H.P. Lovecraft fan, has there been any adaptations, like film adaptations that you've enjoyed? I know that for his films, there's been a particularly hard time to really adapt them because of all these unnameable things that appear in the books. So has there been one that you've enjoyed?
Oh yeah, there's a couple like Reanimator, which really kind of goes way far afield of the story in the book. Reanimator is a great story unto itself. The movie is it's great. I love that. There was another one made, it's Dagon, which was made back in like the early 2000s or late 1990s. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's not bad. It's more like Shadow over the Innsmouth than it is anything else, but they played that okay. It wasn't bad. I enjoyed it enough that I said they did a decent job with it. And then what's the other one with Jeffrey Combs, where he has the pituitary gland coming out?
From Beyond.
From Beyond, yes, thank you. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting old, so you can see the gray. It's not working. I like that movie a lot too. So those are probably the top three that I would say for that.
Cool.
That I enjoyed.
I would recommend The Call of Cthulhu. It's a silent film made in the 2000s by some really diehard fans. It's hard to find, but it plays out like a silent film. It looks like a silent film. Looks from that era, and it's really good.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like Lovecraft. We catch a lot of slack when we post information and everything about him because we know he had a bad past and everything like that with all that happened back then. But he left this legacy of horror that everybody can appreciate, and so now, like when you see films like Castle Freak and like you said Reanimator, it's just like this guy, he just brought so much to the table. But yes, he had another side, but like we just kind of just focus on his legacy of what he has done for the horror community and everything like that. So but we're from Providence, Rhode Island, and a lot of his legacy is here. So that's the main thing, and that's what we just focus on. And so
I totally get it. And there are even today, and I don't want to talk about the guy's name. I won't say his name, but the man who directed and created Jeepers Creepers, his whole issue with Clown House, I have to disassociate what he did in Clown House with Jeepers Creepers. I have to say, okay, do I say I can't watch this just because he's involved with this, or do I say it's okay and go forth? So I have to say I'm going to disassociate things and go with its merits and base it on the movie rather than the person sometimes.
Yep.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah, man. I just wanted to touch on this. You were talking about audiobooks too, and can you tell us about your podcast, because RPG literature is apparently a thing, and I had no idea until I got your book. I'm not a video game guy, but then I listened to almost every episode of your podcast, and I was like, oh man, that's pretty cool. There are not a lot of horror ones that I've noticed, but how did you get to that?
Okay, well, LitRPG has only been around for a short while, and it really was kind of created by Russian people, believe it or not. They started writing the genre, and it filtered over to the U.S. probably about 5 or 6 years after they started doing it, and they were having stuff translated. And the whole premise of LITRPG, if you don't know what I'm talking about, is it's literature role-playing games. So you take a video game and imagine what would happen if you were stuck in this kind of video game. So most of them were like fantasy worlds, science fiction, but you can be in anything. I mean, there are literally books about farming because you have farming games and that sort of thing. So LITRPG spans every genre. You can tie them in. And like Joshua said, there's not a lot of horror. There's only 2 other people I can think of that have written horror LITRPG. And one's Angel Ramon, and he has a zombie series. And the other is Jonathan Brooks, and he has the Core of Fear, which he has it's Dungeon Core, which is a sub-genre of LITRPG, where you have a little stone and it builds a dungeon that has monsters and traps and that sorts of thing, and it lures people in and does tries to kill them but keep them coming back for more. And so those are the only 2 other people that I can think of right off the top of my head that write anything even remotely having to do with horror in LITRPG. But LITRPG is fun. I kind of fell into it by accident. I read one book and I was like, wow, this is a really good story. And then I got another one and another one. And honestly, Joshua, you would probably love, there's a book called Morning Wood.
Oh, he would definitely love that.
Yeah. Morning Wood is not what you expect. It's if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons, do you know what a mimic is?
I played Dungeons and Dragons a long time ago, and there was a lot of foreign substances involved in our play beforehand. Mm-hmm. So I got to tell you, I don't remember a single thing about the game. It's super huge. My son's like, "Can you show me how to play?" I'm like, "Not anymore. Okay. Not anymore."
Well, the book is from the perspective of a mimic, which is one of those things that imitates a treasure chest, so that when you go to open it up, it eats you. And it sounds really far-fetched, but it is like one of the best books I've ever read. And it's really toned down because the writer also has it up on like Royal Road. And there he's very hypersexual in a lot of stuff. Like there's just scenes where people are doing crazy stuff, and he toned it down for the novels. It's still there though. So it's a lot like reading an R level or R-rated movie with this thing. So it's a monster's perspective, and I liked it a lot. Because it's just crazy. The monster, you'd have to listen to the audiobook more than anything because they go into it's just fantastic. The audiobook is so good. I can't imagine it being better written. It just has to be heard to get it as well as it comes out. But it's a great book. You would like it a lot. So I
was thinking that the porn LITRPG game must be bonkers, man. I can just imagine.
Well, they have them. They do. It's called Harem Lit. And that's like another subgenre of LITRPG. Harem. So it's like one guy and like 10 girls. And there are authors who that's their whole shtick is they write about how a guy goes out, he gets powers from humping everybody, or he gets powers from doing this, and he gets more strength as women come into his harem. So it's there. It's all there. Like I said, LITRPG covers everything.
Dave, I'm trying to think of other scenarios that like just to see if I can disprove this, but I feel like I can't even think of anything. Like if they have farming, they have everything. Like, what?
No, and like I said, I'm not exaggerating it at all. They literally, if there's a game about it or there's something that people think you could turn into a game, that's it. And that's kind of how I sat down and I said, and believe it or not, Nightmare Game is not my first novel. I've got another novel that's been written, and it's just been taking forever for my publisher to get it out. And that one is a monster story too. It's told from the perspective of a giant spider, and she's got a sidekick that's a human who's gone into the video game where she exists, and he is a horror fan, so he puts himself, like, every time he gets into a fight, he's like, hey, what horror movie would this kind of like help me out in if I'm in this position or something? And he ends up doing something really stupid most of the time. Like he's running around and he's like, oh, that scene in Jurassic Park where the dinosaur's chasing the guy with the flare? Wow. And he's got a sword and he throws his sword away. And then he's like, oh shit, there's my sword. I just tried to distract him by throwing away my sword. So that sort of stuff. That's what that book is. This one here came when I just kind of said I want to meld the two things because, like I said, there's really very few people that have written anything with horror in the RPG. So I kind of had to take up that torch.
An untapped resource right there.
Indeed.
Yeah. I got to tell you, when I read it, I told the guys, I was like, you guys got to read this. It's like Waxwork, which is one of our favorite films. So I was like, dude, he goes through these different stages, and each stage is a monster, and it's so awesome. I was actually really blown away at how good the book was. So Thank you.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you.
So the first question I wanted to ask about the Nightmare book itself was, how did you get connected with, what was it, Spectrum Books, I think it was?
Yep.
Because they sent it to me, and then through talking to them, I ended up talking to you. So
Right. Well, LITRPG is one of these weird little things. It's something nobody knows about, but the people that do know about it, we're a very tight-knit community. I mean, like if I post hey, I blew my nose today, there's going to be people saying, what Kleenex did you use? So, it's very close, very, very protective of each other. It's really not like any other book writing community, because if you go into anything else, people will tear you apart if you say this or that. I mean, they rip you to pieces. And with that, I had posted the Nightmare game on Royal Road, which is a place you go to put your stories out for people to give you feedback with. And Annalise Rennie, who runs Spectrum, she read the first chapter where Stanislav has Ramzan and he's getting ready to torture him, putting him into the game. And she was like, dude, I love this story. Give me 10 minutes and I'll be back with you. So she's a little bit longer than 10 minutes, but she literally recorded the entire first chapter and sent it back to me and says, I want to do this book. And I thought, wow, she really, really liked the book and was very hyped up and wanted to do this. So I have an AI in the book and her name's Blair. And I based the voice and the acting on Annalise. So when I wrote it, it was her voice I had in my head, knowing it was going to go to audiobook, because Spectrum does audiobooks more than anything else. So it was kind of like that was the way it was done. And the way I got into writing in the first place with LITRPG was Shadow Alley Press, which has James Hunter, who does the Viridian Gate online series, which is a great series. I had opened it up for novice writers to send in stories to be put into a compilation, an anthology. And they picked like the 6 that they liked the best. And I said, well, the hell with it. I'm going to do something different. And I'm going to write about a spider. I don't want to write about a person or anything like that. I'm going to do something totally weird, totally different, and something I don't have to really, how do I put this? Pay attention to the rules so much, because I'm not stuck with, I have to do this, this, and this if it's this kind of thing. So with the spider, I could do anything I wanted. And they liked it a lot. And that's how I got the deal to do the trilogy that I'm working on with them right now. And so that was like my first out. I got that out first. And then I was in a couple other anthologies from that point forth. And so, like I said, I just started writing that and it just kind of happened. It was just one of these weird coincidences of, would I've completed the book if I didn't hear from her? Probably, but I don't know. It was just the way it was. So.
Nice. Now, for the Nightmare game system, what video games and what horror films inspired you to write this book?
Well, if you look at the book, I've got like all my favorite monsters in the book, basically. Mm-hmm. Like I said, when I grew up, my 2 favorite monsters were Godzilla and the Wolfman. And I didn't want to put Godzilla in there because that's just something that my hero couldn't beat. There's just no way. He could do a lot of stuff, but killing a giant monster like that, there's no way. So I put in like the Blob. I kind of mixed and matched with like the Thing and Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the Pod People. I kind of merged those things together. There's werewolves, there's zombies. So all my favorite things, I said, I gotta put this in here. I got to do something with it. And I couldn't do spiders because I'm writing a spider book and I didn't want to be the spider guy. So, I just kind of threw in everything I really enjoyed. And then I also have like, Friday the 13th character in there. His name's Kane. And there's a lot of different reasons why his name's Kane, but it's really a throwback to Kane Hodder. Yep. I love the guy. But it's also like he carries a machete, and it's kind of like he used a machete to cut down sugar cane. And, I just have like, there's 5 things. Everything I did in there, there's so many different little hidden gems or Easter eggs, if you want to call it that, that there's no way everybody, even I would probably forget half the stuff I threw in there. Because like in the zombie scene, there's a song. I don't know if you ever heard, Hey, Tom, it's me, Bob, from the office down the hall. It's a great song. And all I do is just want to come in and eat your brains. Fantastic. It's so funny. And so I made that part of the story, No one will ever see that but me, and that's okay.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So every character is like a little nod to something that means something to you.
Yes. Yeah. And in fact, in the zombie thing, there's actually a scene where if you ever watch the original, The Thing from Another World, there's a character, Yaromir, who kind of tries to be like the scientist and be like, hey, why can't we just get along and do that? That was right from there. I said, I got to throw this in here because it's like smart guy, dumbass move. I got to put that in somewhere because that's just how people that people are, that, you know, they don't think that they're too smart for their own good sometimes. And so I had to do that. But like I say, I have callbacks to a lot of stuff, but it's all original. I didn't steal anything from anybody.
There were spiders in that book when he was in between two levels. I think he was in between the two levels. I'm trying to remember. And the spiders came down and he was like, so then he went into the level. It was like, if you don't go into the level, the spiders are going to devour you, kind of thing.
Right.
It was I like reading this book, the more I read it, I was like, holy crap, you had a lot of stuff in there for horror fans. I got to tell you, super good book.
Well, thank you.
It was packed with more horror nods than a season of American Horror Story.
Yeah.
It made more sense.
Well, that's easy to do. American Horror Story.
You know what? You answered all my questions just in talking about the book.
Sorry.
That's awesome, actually.
That book was awesome. But then I also read another one of your books that you had published, which was Art of the Deal. And there were 2 short stories. A super short book. It was only like, I think 25 pages or something.
Yeah. And I apologize because you paid for that. And that was $5. And I have that book on Kindle for nothing. It was just for me to get that out there. So I felt so bad when I saw you got it, man.
So I obviously buy a lot of books, and I'm not allowed to buy books frequently due to the fact that I buy so many. So I had to be like, I went up to my wife. I was like, Miranda, look, there's 2 books on here, like $5 each. And she's like, all right, they're only $10. That's good. So that, you know, we're budgeted. So, you know, it is what it is. So that's the one I ended up with. But I really like the stories, and I know that was your earlier work.
Yeah.
So can you care to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. I used to read an old magazine. It was a horror magazine called Cabal Asylum, and they would have people just submit stories, and you know, you would read it, and it was like the Twilight Zone, different movies or different, you know, whatever. So it was kind of a mix and match, and then they started doing theme things, and one of the themes that he came up with, the publisher said, well, you want to do a thing called Deal with the Devil. You know, you can write anything you want as long as there's a story based on the main character making a deal with the devil. And so I kind of said, okay, if it was me, because I always try to put myself in these positions, how would I do this? Would I be smart, or would I just be like, okay, give me, $1 million and walk away? And I said, no, I would try to play the players. I would try to outwit the guys as best I could and see if I could get away with it. And that's where, Mr. Red came from, as he climbed that Mount Morgan. And that's not bad. I haven't read that story in probably, my God, 15 years. And I remember his name's Morgan Red. But he's the guy that says, I have a plan from way before I ever met these demons on how to take care of things. And he let them play him and make it look like, things were happening. And at the end, things flip around. And I don't want to give anything away, but like I said, that's how I would deal with it. I always try to play smart. Like in my nightmare game, Ramzan is like me. I said, you know what, if there's a guy and he's going to give me trouble, I'm pitching this cat. I'm not playing with him. I'm taking him out. It's going to cause me to get killed. It's done. And so that's where Ramzan's survivability came into play. And it's the same thing with Morgan. Just trying to think about how you should deal with paranormal monsters or guys right outside your window trying to break in. How should you do things? And that's just where that kind of came from. I thought, okay, great deal with the devil. I can do that. No problem at all.
I love that how you said, like, when you're thinking about your characters, you like to think about how you would act in these scenarios first when you're kind of thinking about how the story will play out. One of my favorite authors, and it's not a horror author, but his name is Bret Easton Ellis, and he wrote American Psycho and a number of other novels. Well, he ended up writing a novel called Lunar Park, where it's actually him in the novel. And all of his characters from all of his novels are coming alive and there's murders involved and things of that nature. Considering the fact that you said you like kind of think about yourself in these stories, have you ever thought about putting yourself actually in a story?
No. Honestly, I guess I'm lying to you. In my book Spider Bite that's coming out next month or two, I'm Cushing. He's as close to being me as you could be, but not be me. Because I do that all the time. I'm like, okay, if I'm in a scenario, what would I do? And Cushing does that. He refers back to monster movies. And I think, okay, well, they did this in this movie and it was stupid. Okay, so how would I have dealt with it? And what would I have done if I were in that situation? So he does that, but he's a lot doofier than I am because he just, he's not too smart with things. I try to like honestly, I have had a zombie preparedness plan since I was 12, and like we just moved, and I've already told my wife, okay, here's what's going to happen if the zombies come. And she's like, do I have to listen to this seriously again? And I'm like, every time we move, there will be a new zombie preparedness plan, okay? And then we'll talk about if there's a fire in the house, what we'll do, but zombies first. So that's just the way it works.
I mean, have her sit down and watch Corona Zombies, and then she'll understand why you're preparing.
The Corona Zombies. That was like I got so much slack for posting that film. Thanks a lot, Dave.
Well, Josh, you like the schlock films, right? The really crappy. Yeah. I can't do those. I need like I need some production value to my movies. I have to have something there.
Yeah.
Well, see, here's the beauty of it. Like, this year was awesome for me because basically just for movies. The movies that came out were all independent. Guys with like, oh, I got $100. We should make a horror movie. And they make it out of the love for the horror movie and their ideas and to get them out. So that's what I really like about them. There are so many good movies that have no budget. And then, a lot of them, they know that they have no budget. So they know they're using Cheerios for guts. You know what I mean? Like
Cheerios for guts.
No, I get it. But like, when I'm watching, and I can't think, I was a teenage were-skunk, And,
that's a favorite of Josh's, I believe.
They got the little, I'm like, come on, at least make an attempt. I just can't, do that.
Yeah.
I can suspend my disbelief, but I can't blow it out of the air. I mean, like, I have to have something to grasp onto. I need some sort of roots. And that little mask and the little blood. No, I can't do that. It just takes me right out of it.
That's the thing, Josh is like really into those films, and myself and Dave with the pandemic and everything, and like theaters shut down, and a lot of movies being held to this upcoming year, maybe. But, we kind of like take that time to kind of just give Josh's films a chance. And so, sometimes they're not as bad as we think they are, but, we sit down, we kind of enjoy them. But, it's the same thing, just like writing and everything like that. I think a lot of people don't really look behind the scenes and look how much is really put into these films and books and novels and like that. So it's just like, we try not to get on and bash on everyone's creative ideas, because at the end of the day, it's someone's baby. They put a lot of work into it, and so
look, I totally get it. I agree with you 100%. But I'm going to make a point. Okay. Okay. If you look at like a movie like Curse of the Demon, one of my favorite films. Okay, it has minimalistic special effects to it. In fact, there were some of them that were thrown in after the fact, just because they wanted that stuff in there to make it more of a monster movie than what it was. What they did with that movie, without the demon showing up, that could have been done for nothing. You just film it in black and white, have a story, you have some runes, and they're going to kill you in so many days unless you get rid of them. Amazing story. You don't have to have some were-skunk mask to tell a good story. I think you can tell a story with no budget as long as you've got some decent actors and you've got a good story. It's all about story to me, So
that's what Josh says too. But I mean, then he tries getting us watching like I don't even know.
Attack of the Blurry Finger just came out, so I tried to get the guys to have a movie night, and it's not happening. So
I don't know, Josh. I was really excited when you showed me COVID-23. This one has potential. I really want to see this.
It's a pretty good zombie flick. I ain't gonna lie. It's not bad.
I have more fun making fun of Josh about these films than I do about actual films.
But you know what? It's just like books. Obviously, there's a big difference between like the Stephen King and Dean Koontz, and then all the other stuff that I read. You know what I mean? Like, I seek out stuff that I've never seen before or that I've never heard of before. And that's the stuff I just like to shine a light on. Somewhat, not all of it's good. Skunk Nose obviously was not the best, but I was a teenage were-skunk where they know it's a $5 budget. There was the last horror movie, which it was basically made for $1,000, and the $1,000 was the guy getting his throat cut. That cost $1,000. That was the whole budget for the film. Almost.
That's awesome.
And that movie was like, you would like, the story in that movie was incredible, so psychological. I'm a big fan of twist, which is why I really like your books. A lot of them a lot of your short stories have a lot of good twists at the end, and I'm like, oh, I would recommend that movie. It's a good twist. So
that's good. And that's the thing. I try to do that. I don't like to just tell. Like I remember I read this anthology one time, and there was this werewolf story, and it was about this guy that was in Iraq that turned into a werewolf, and he killed a whole bunch of opposing soldiers. And I was like, where's the story at? I mean, that's just what werewolves do. I need more, than that. It was great up until that point, but I was like, okay. And then he got up the next day and was like, I'm back to the squad or whatever. It's like, there's no story there. It's just like, here's a snippet of what happens if you're a werewolf. And I just don't get that kind of stuff. I like to, and I try very hard to flip things over so that, either you see it coming, but, you don't see it coming. You think it's going to happen or whatever. I try not to go, and whether I succeed or not, that's hard to say. but I like to have that flip, like I know you read Scratches. Did you see that? I know you got the book.
Yeah. So I haven't finished the book, but okay. Your story was it was good. I really like the twists and turns and stuff like that. And every story I've read of yours. So you sent me a bunch of short stories. Every story in the short stories, at the end of them, I'm like, oh my God. And that has happened for every single story that I have read of yours, that one included.
Yeah. And that's, I try to do that. Like I said, I think my favorite, I didn't see it coming, was with the Backyard Monsters, the monster throwdown between Bigfoot and Dogman. I tried to throw something in where you didn't see the ending coming. And, it was.
Oh, that was the Battle Royal story.
Yeah, the Battle Royale. Yes, yes.
That one was real good. I'm a big monster fan, so I was all over that.
Good.
I don't want to give away, but
yeah, no, I don't want to either. but no, like I said, I tried. That was like where I was like, okay, this is where I'm coming from. I think if I do this, no one will see it happening, and so, and the other thing is I try to tie in all my stuff in some way. Like and I know you didn't read those, the other LITRPG stuff, but like I said, I started off with a spider, and then I wrote a book about a goblin, and then I had a book about a dungeon, and I had a book about an orc. And in the orc book, I had him kill all the other characters off in some way that you didn't really know it was the other characters, but he kills a spider, he kills a goblin, and he kills a core, so that I tie that in. So just for me, again, that's just for me. But I try to tie those in. And so like in my short stories for horror, I try to have a connection from one story to another in some small way. So maybe there's a character that shows up or something, or they're related to a character. So like in the Battle Royale, there's a brother to a character that's in one of my Blob stories that shows up, so I have different things like that. I try to tie those all together.
Yeah, that's awesome. So speaking of a Battle Royale, Josh makes a post every week of a horror icon throwdown. He chooses, some of the icons of horror, and he puts them up against each other and then lets the fans vote, like, who do they think would win? Now, if you had that opportunity to pick two icons, who would you choose and why?
Well, first off, I think my favorite horror icon is Ashley J. Williams. I love Ash from Evil Dead. Mm-hmm. He's so stupid. And he just does not realize half of the stuff he's doing, and yet he still perseveres. And I like that you can be stupid and still come out on top. It's not like you can be super smart and succeed all the time. You can be dumb. But after that, I don't know, because like I've read Ash versus Jason versus Freddy. I've seen Freddy versus Jason. Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees would be kind of boring. I would probably go, but again, to me, this is pretty simple. And I'll tell you where I would go, but like the Blob versus the Thing, two of my favorites. The Blob would win because the Thing couldn't assimilate. But if you really want to look at it, I've always said that the xenomorphs from Alien would be the perfect counterbalance to John Carpenter's The Thing. They have acidic blood. The Thing could not assimilate them. It would be a pretty good battle. I think that would be like my thing. What would you pick? John Carpenter's The Thing versus the xenomorphs from Alien.
I like that. That's interesting.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's next week's horror icon throwdown story.
Yeah, Ray, you're in. Josh, you're out.
I can't do that to Josh.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to post it first, and then I'm going to edit this, and then say, "Oh, I already did that one."
Oh wow! I can't believe you mentioned my last week's throwdown.
Yeah.
Oh, you must be a fan of the page.
That's it a lot. Yeah. But see, I do think about that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good one. That's not a lot of people put a lot of thought into them. I used to before we all hooked up and started doing PVD horror. I was doing that on Horror Depot page, which was a business I ran a couple years ago that never, I just had a lot of issues with the website, but I used to do those all the time, and I got so many hardcore fans really going into it, and now a lot of people are like, this guy would win.
For the record, we never hooked up, though, Josh. We never hooked up. He said when we hooked up, we didn't hook up. That's not how this all came about. I just want to put that out there for the listeners. That's not how this came about.
Dave, I can't.
We're just three friends. I want to make that clear.
Shut up, Dave. Yeah. So aside from Dave's nastiness, there was another question I wanted. You were talking about scratches initially, and I can't remember the main character's name, but he was. When I was reading it, I'm like, is this guy a wizard or is he a demon? Like, what is going on? How did you come up with this story? Is what I wanted to know. And then there was also another question added to that. How did you get into the Scratches book? Because I've read a couple of the other stories, and some of the other stories are not as good as yours.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I just submitted stories. I go on and I submit. Somebody says we have a call for something, and I do. I try it out. Like it sounds stupid, but like Black Hair Press does these books where you can either write. It's usually for them, it's a 100-word story. And I'd never heard of doing a 100-word story before. And I said, I'm going to try and see if I can do this. I'll see if I can write a story within 100 words and then get it published. And so I submitted to 2 of their books. I got picked up for 2 stories, and that's all I submitted was a story for each one. And so I said, okay, I can write 100-word stories. And then I moved on to doing like a 1,000-word story. And then I try to experiment with what I can do, because I wrote a 1-act play based on werewolves and aliens that I've never published yet. But, like you say, I try to test myself. So whenever somebody has something open, I just say, can I do this? And I write it and I submit it. And that's how I got in with them.
That's pretty cool.
That's actually really cool that you can do that. I hope you get paid for all that writing.
Yeah, sure. I wish I would too.
Yeah, Ray, I gotta tell you, that's super impressive. I can't do anything in under 100 words. I am like the king of just putting way too many words to anything I write. So to think about making a story less than 100 words is actually mind-boggling to me. So that's actually pretty impressive.
Well, I thank you, but like I agree with you 100%. I'm the same way. Like I am very verbose when I write. Like I don't do anything short. Like Nightmare Game was only supposed to be 80,000 words. Like in my head, it was going to be 80,000 words, and I came at like 125 or 130,000 words altogether. It's a 500-page book, and I was like, "What the hell happened?" I was just trying to keep a short little story, keep it nice and tight, And I just because like honestly, I'll tell you with that right there, especially. There's a character in the book named Blair, and Blair, if you want to talk about paranormal, Blair is real. I know you haven't read it, but she's a demon and she's an artificial intelligence simultaneously. And nothing I wrote of Blair was for me. Like I sat down and what came out, and I was like, where is this coming from? Because I don't talk like this. I don't think like this. And every time her character came up, I was like, well, we're going to have her do this. And she's like, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm doing this. And I was like, what? Come on, work with me here. Yeah. And Blair is I don't know if you ever heard of tulpas. I'm sure you guys have because you're horror fans. I think she's a tulpa. I think that she is something that like I saw so well that she became real, that she literally has life to her because I don't have to do anything with her. Like literally, I just sat down and just started writing book 2 the other day, and Blair's chapter went right through the thing, and I thought I didn't even know what was going to happen there. I just know that this is what happened after the fact. Blair is so alive, but she is so nasty, and so she is very naughty when it comes to sex. To say the least. And I'm not like that. I'm a very conservative guy in my opinion.
We heard your voice at the beginning, all right?
Yeah, you're not going to fool us, Ray.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying, Sexually speaking, I'm not crazy. I don't go wild.
You don't just come on and say, "Hey, this is Ray Big Daddy Johnson," and then say you're not that guy.
You know my nickname. How did you know that? Big Johnson. That's me. But but no, I mean,
my name for this show. It's all right, Ray.
You're fine. But that was like the weirdest thing for me I've ever had happen with writing. Was I've never had a character that like literally full blown, full bore, just came at me 100% and took no shit from me. Like I couldn't beat her. She just came to life, and she was pretty much based on Annalise Rennie, Joshua from Spectrum, who, like I said, she called me up and said, "Hey, can I do this?" And she narrated, and I thought, okay, I'm doing this in her voice. I'm gonna have her voice in my head, and that's whose voice I used to, as I wrote it. That's how I thought she would sound. But she literally, otherwise, came out 100% and was there full blown. It's just born from nothing.
Cool. I'm glad you clarified that, because when you first said, "Oh, I based it on this lady," oh my God, there's a lady like this.
Yeah,
she should not be allowed in public.
No. Annalise is a really nice lady. She is fantastic.
We should clear that up right now, that it was only based on her reading the character.
Yes. Her natural speaking voice, it's perfect for Blair. So I don't want anybody to think that Annalise is like, the way she acts is nothing like Blair at all. Not even remotely close.
Yeah, Blair is super over-sexualized. I was like, when I read that, I was like, ooh.
Yeah. And in my world... Yeah, in my world, demons never get what they want. So, like, if you're the demon of lies, you want truth, and you can never get it. And so with Blair, she's never going to get laid. I hate to say it for her, but she's never going to.
Damn it!
Yeah.
Come on.
Yep, but
just once.
So there was before we go into the last bit of the podcast, I really wanted to ask you about the nature versus nature. Oh my God. What was
nature versus necromancy?
Yes.
Versus nurture?
So you brought up the dungeon story earlier. I had never read a dungeon story in my life, ever. And this was another one where at the end I was like, what the, like, this was so well done. Like, and I don't know what book this was in, because you just sent me the short story, but I thought this was a horror story in a dungeon setting. Is that where you were going with that, or?
I'll be frank with you. Okay, first off, it's in Dakota Kraut's Essence. It's what it's called. It's Essence. Okay. And when I sat down to write this, the only thing I knew was I wanted to write a story about a dungeon that was based in nature. Hence the title was Nature versus Nurture. And usually when I sit down to write a story, I never know how it's going to end. I like to not know. I don't sit down and plan how things are going to turn out for short stories. For a novel, I know how things are going to happen from A to B to Z all the way to that point. But for a short story, I try to let them surprise me as much as they do you. And with this, I said, I want to write a story about a nature dungeon. I had, and of course I had to play stupid and make, the wood elemental be called Woody and, that sort of stuff. So I knew that was it. And as I was writing it, I thought, man, how messed up would it be if this happened? If something came along and totally flipped them over so they're no longer what they really are, and I thought, okay, that's where I'm going to go with it. And originally it was just going to become a vampiric dungeon. I said, it'll just be like they turn into vampires or something. As I kept going, the story said, no, there's this old guy and he just shows up and this is what happened. So I had no idea that was going to occur. Like I said, it's the same thing with Blair. I didn't know what Blair was going to do. With that and most of the other short stories, I never know how it's going to end. And to me, it was just like as he was going through the dungeon and destroying things, I was trying to make it silly and fun and yet make it super freaking dark at the end. And that's where I kind of wanted to go. So that's just, like I said, it was a surprise to me as much as it was to you, I'm sure.
Yeah, there was I thought it was going in one direction and then it just turned, and that I've noticed that with a lot of your writing, and that's why I really like it. When you think it's going to go this way and then it veers off and you're like, what the hell? I think that really makes the story. I got to say that was a cool story.
Well, thank you. Well, I grew up watching like Outer Limits and Twilight Zone, from day one, like as far as I can recall. And the best stories were the ones, that flipped it over at the end. Like you think it's going to happen this way. Like, like everybody, the greatest all time one is with Burgess Meredith with no time. There's all this time and he can't read a book, and of course the not being able to read a book thing just terrified me as a kid. I was like, oh God, he can't read a book. But it was like, you never see it coming. You're like, he's got it. He's awesome. He's got everything he's ever asked for. And then crunch, he breaks those glasses. And I said, this is how a story should be done. You should never know how it's going to end. If you can see it coming from a mile away, you got to go back and revamp it. You got to change. And that's exactly what I try to do. Now, be honest with you, with Nightmare Game, I had a plan for a 3-book trilogy. So I wanted it to be more like I was watching a movie. Okay, like, so you see a movie, there's the ending, and then they have the after credit scenes and that sort of stuff. I tried to make it that way so that you knew there was going to be a part 2. Okay, because I don't like to have, like, with the end of like Blob 2, which is a great movie. Like, if you want to ask me where I fell in love with the Blob, it was the son of the Blob, where at the end of the movie, the sheriff's there and he's got the little lantern on the ice and it melts the ice and the Blob comes up and grabs his boot and he's like, what? And there's a question mark at the end. It says the end and there's the blobby thing. I was like, okay, you didn't see that. Even though as a kid, I was like, why would you go out there and walk on that ice? No way, get away. Just put more ice in there. Go grab bags of ice from the store. Fill that place up. That's kind of like how I like to have things happen. You don't see it coming. You don't know it's going to hit you at the end. So that's just been like my way of writing since as far back as I can remember. But like I say, the silly thing is I never know where it's going to go. I really don't. So for me, I'm exploring the story as much as the reader is.
That's awesome.
So what I got out of that is Nightmare Game System is going to be a part 2.
Hopefully there'll be a part 3.
That's awesome. It was good. So I'm looking forward to it. And then at the end, you're left, and I was like, oh man, like where's the rest of it? So I'm that you're thinking of doing more with that.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, like I say, I always think in trilogies. Like I say, I don't believe in like one books or one-offs, and I don't like to have there are some writers who do like 15 books in a series. I'm a firm believer in 1, 2, 3. You've told a solid story, and then move along to something else. And if you want to revisit that other world that you were in before, you can go back, but don't make it drag out. Don't do that. You need to close things up. I watch a movie. I can watch a trilogy and say, okay, Star Wars 1 was good, Star Wars 2 was good, and part 3 sucked, okay, because of the Ewoks. Whatever it is, I can say that, but they at least told a story, and I can say this is how it started and here's how it ends. And that's what I think more than anything, most writers today on Amazon, especially the independents, they want to have like an 85-book series. And I just don't like that. Like it just treads water. They call that slice of life, where I'm from. We just wandered around the land and we fought monsters. And then at the end of the day, we put our swords away. We took a nap. It was interesting, but where's the story? I need to have something to conclude things. And that's just the way I look at it. I have to have that. So yeah, right now I've started working on the Nightmare Game Part 2. And it would probably have the first chapter added into the audiobook. So honestly, Josh, between you and me, if you contact Annalise, I'm sure she'll send you a code for the audiobook.
That's awesome.
Do you find it challenging writing a sequel to your book, or like from comparing it to the first one? Like, how's that process for you?
It depends. Like what Josh was saying, with nature versus nurture, nurture necromancy, because I slash out the nurture. I don't think I could tell, which I did. I did tell the rest of the story, but it was hard for me to figure it out. Like I've got in the other 2 dungeon anthologies, the next 2 parts of the story comes out and I wrap it up. But it didn't stay as nearly as dark as I tried to keep it a little bit lighter, but like in part 2, it got really, really dank. And then so part 3, I kind of lightened it up a little bit, but it was still a little scary, in touches. But yeah, that was the hardest one I had, because I really didn't have a plan for it at all. And it was just like I said, I wrote it, didn't know where it was going, and then there it was. And then people were like, this would make a great novel. If you wrote this series, the way this looks right now, it would be like really good to do. And I'm like, I would love to do that. But I've got literally, I'm writing a post-apocalyptic trilogy. I'm writing the LITRPG Spider trilogy, and I'm working on Nightmare Game. So, those, I've got 9 books I've got to write. So basically I'm pretty much full up right now. So
good, even busy.
It's a good thing you got laid off then. Look at it that way, right?
It is. Oh yeah.
I was laid off recently as well, but I got to tell you, the time has been amazing. I got to work on this podcast, and I got to read a lot more than I've been meaning to read. Obviously, I have tons of books, and I got to spend time with my kids. Like, you can't replace that, so it's a blessing in disguise, right?
Absolutely. It is. And, I've actually, as a field director, I was never home. I was out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And like I say, the greatest thing for me is I got laid off right in the middle of November, and it was so quiet for the longest time for us. And then like right after my boss laid me off, and I was like, you're going to be sorry. You're going to be sorry. They blew up. Like they had like 30 calls. And I was like, sorry. I'm back, too bad. Tough kitty, because, I'm free now. I don't have to worry about things. And I really, as much as I love my job, I don't miss it. It's just one of those crazinesses that, people don't experience. It's just the way things go. You've got to deal with so many emotional roller coasters, physical things. I'm lifting, carrying, moving people. I'm going to crime scenes. I'm going to, homes. It's a lot. And to never have your family around, like it was causing marital stress. Like my wife and I, we have had really rough times in the last couple of years. Now it's so much better for us. So I'm not missing it. And being laid off is probably the best thing that could have happened to me in a long time. And I'm taking advantage of it while I can.
That's awesome.
I will say I am absolutely fascinated with funeral directors, though. Like that job is like fascinating to me because there's so many components of it. Like you had said, it's like an emotional roller coaster. You have to be so many different roles. So I give you a lot of credit for doing that in general. That's a job that I think not many people have that emotional stability to even do. So that says something a little bit about you as well.
Yeah, well, I think that funeral directors are like bartenders without the alcohol. That's just it. Everybody comes in and they spill their guts and they're overwhelmed emotionally and they don't know what they're doing half the time. And then, and I've dealt with everything from fist fights to, the most loving family that, you can imagine.
Yeah.
But you guys are in the medical field, correct? I mean, yeah. I don't know how you do that job because I couldn't do it. I could not deal with sick people and having to do the things that you have to do to take care of people. I just really, that's not within me. So everybody has a niche that they can do. And like I said, I have people tell me all the time, like, I could never do your job. And I'm like, I could probably never do your job. I can't be a lumberjack. I can't do this. I do what I do for a reason. I've had a call since I was a kid. Like I knew I wanted to be a funeral director since I was probably 5 years old. I will never forget. I watched True Grit with my dad. And the one character in the whole movie that stood out to me was the Undertaker when Maddie Ross goes to see her dad. And he's like, you may kiss him if you want. She's like, nope. And I'm like, what a little skank. He's trying to be nice. He's the nicest guy there. And she's like being this total nasty. Come on, get out of here.
You had compassion for him.
Yeah, I did. And I was like, what does that guy do, Dad? And he's like, that's the mortician. You don't want to ever deal with them kind of. I'm like, no, that's what I want to do, So I knew about it since day one. That's pretty much it,
Yeah. Of all the places I thought this podcast would go, True Grit was not one of them.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Then, my last question was, so you wrote a couple of short stories about blobs. So I read both of them. What was it? The one in the cooler, the thing in the cooler and the eccentric force. So and then I asked you, they're going to be in the same book. Can you tell us about that book coming up?
Yeah, it's several other authors. There's another LITRPG author, Lavelle Jackson, who threw in a story from him. And then there's the, other people from Night Sky, because it's Night Sky anthology. So if you've read like the Backyard Monsters or Scratches or whatever else, I know that the stories I gave you, the same people are in there as well, like Kevin Candela and that sort of thing. So those will all be in there. And like I said, I kind of bookended it because with the eccentric force, I wanted something like totally weird. And I said, you know what? I've never seen a blob movie or a blob story dealing with ectoplasm. So I've got to do this. I've got to make one that deals with like the stuff that would come out of the spiritualists' mouths and explain exactly what that is. And the other one, I said, you know what? Of course, I had to go back to Lovecraft and make it more Lovecraftian in style with the thing in the cooler. Because, to me, that's like, just the way he would have told a blob story. It wouldn't have been the same way, of course, but I think that would be kind of his blob story with the hopelessness. And then the when everything happens at the end, the really bad things are going to happen just off scene, as it closes out. So I tried to really kind of match, the different styles of the stories to where they were coming from. So for me, I looked up a lot of stuff for the eccentric force based on like spiritualists. I had to look up things. I had to look up when newspapers were out, what newspapers were there. I researched the hell out of stuff. The Russian thing. I mean, like you just don't realize how much I had to look up for the Nightmare game. And my wife has a friend who's Russian. So I would like, okay, how would you swear in this? If I said this, what would be the swear word? And bleen, and I had all that stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm good. And after she got the book and she was looking through it and she was going through the glossary and she says, well, soy pope. That is not how we say fat ass. We would say zupa. And I said, well, why the hell didn't you tell me that before? So, but I research everything. So like with the Eccentric Force, everything there should be kind of like on par with what was going on in that era and that timeline, Cool. So I try to make sure everything matches up. So it's not just me like writing a story and making things up on the fly. Yeah. I try to keep it grounded as best I can.
You've listed a lot of things that I really appreciate in what I read. So you talked about, first off, having like a little bit of a universe, like your characters. I love that. I like the fact that you research things. Some of my favorite authors, like I read a lot of, it's not horror, but it's Chuck Palahniuk, or however you say it, Palahniuk, I don't know. But he does a ton of research, and you just can tell when you read his novels that he knows what he's talking about because he's looked it up. So I appreciate that. And just, how you kind of like conceptualize your characters and you like put yourself into the shoes of them and kind of figure out like how you would respond in some of these situations. So I think that, I love the way that you're kind of organizing these books and your stories. And I think that put together so well. So, it's a really cool way to approach it.
Thank you. For me, it's a cheat though, because this way I can put together an anthology, or actually not an anthology. I can do a collection of my works, and you're going to see one character plays into another, or this happens here, and it'll be more universal. So even though that they're in different companies or whatever, I have the rights to all my stories. And so like one day I'll release a collection and everything will make sense. I've got a whole bunch of different stuff that has never been released yet. Yeah, I've got time travel stories. I've got, this, that, the other thing. It'll all show up, and that way it'll all tie together more or less. And like I said, with Josh's question about the Blob, there's a character in there that is a Cambion. He's half demon, half man, and he carries over from that to Scratches. So I was kind of happy that he read that, and I don't know if he liked the guy. but I was like, I want this guy to show up in a couple of different books. And of course, you see what happens to him in one of the stories, but he'll be in a couple other things because I've written things with him prior to that. So just never been released yet.
So the character in Scratches, the one that was doing the stuff, was that the same character that was in the Art of the Deal?
No. That was Morgan Red.
I was making that connection, and I didn't know if that was the same.
No, totally different. And actually, I have two other stories for Art of the Deal that I've never put out there because they need polished up a lot, because it was just like scribble. But basically, Morgan, he ends up like, first off, he says, I think I can take over hell, so I want to become Satan. And then after he gets that role, the next book is Can I Take on God? And so, there's big steps for Morgan as he goes through things. So he thinks he's learned a lot of stuff, and of course, Joshua, at this point, I think you see where I go. There's surprises and everything. So, but like I have different stories in mind for Morgan as opposed to, the Cambion from the Blob story and, Scratches. So.
Yeah. And here's the thing for anybody listening. What was it? Spectrum Books sent me just the RPG book, right? The Nightmare Game System. And after I read that, I was so enthralled that I went out and tracked down some more of your books. And when I told you that I was ordering more of your books, then you sent me more stuff, and I read it all. So that's got to tell you. And I know I like offbeat stuff, but I did a Book of the Week post, and the people that did like it, they read a lot. So, and I got a lot of positive feedback from our readers. There's for me to, if I read one of your books that was given to me and then I go out and buy the rest of them, that's saying a lot. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. Like I said, I just try to write something that people will enjoy, or at least that I enjoy. And as a horror fan, I know if I enjoy it, then maybe other people will as well. Horror is just one of these things. I really hold horror near and dear to my heart. I mean, it's just one of those. I grew up, like, literally, I'll never forget, like, probably the scariest movie I ever saw was one I had to watch behind the back seat of my dad. We went to the drive-in, and we were there to watch Godzilla, like a Godzilla movie. And then right after that came out they just released Last House on the Left. And my dad's, okay, Godzilla's over. I'm putting you guys to bed, go down and go to sleep, threw a blanket over our heads. And I had to like lean back and watch. And I was like, this is the freakiest movie I have ever seen. Stuff I should never have seen at my age, ever. And, of course, it probably warped me. So that was like my Aunt Cheryl, because she snuck us into the drive-in. And then my Aunt Peg, I'll never forget, she was babysitting us, and Alien was coming on, and I knew Alien was on, and she would watch it, but she wouldn't let us watch it. And I said, oh, Aunt Peg, I've already seen Alien. We can watch this together. It'd be great. She goes, you've seen that movie? And of course, I research everything. Even as a kid, I'd be like, okay, I know what happens in this movie. I'm like, oh, yeah, when the captain gets killed, it's great. She's like, oh, well, you've seen it. Let's watch it. So we're watching this film, and my mother and father come in. What scene do they walk in on? Sigourney Weaver standing in her underpants. And my dad is like flipping out, what the hell are you watching? And she's like, he's watched this before. He's like, he's never seen this. I'm like, yeah, shut up. It's almost over. Let me be. It's the end of the movie. And so of course that's why I love my Aunt Cheryl, my Aunt Peg, because they really have kind of helped me get my horror on. And they were, my dad got me into Chilly Billy. We would watch Chiller Theater. Yeah. So for me, horror is one of those things that I take very seriously. And like I say, I don't mean to downplay you, Joshua, but like schlock films are just not my style. I need like a really good, something. And I don't begrudge that to anybody, because I know people that love those kind of movies. And if that's what you like, God bless you, because you're allowed to love whatever you like. I can't do it. But for me, I take horror so sincerely. When it's great, it's fantastic. And when it's not, it's really
it's funny. My son and I just watched Alien the other day. And now he is enthralled, and was driving. I forget where we were going. I picked up like my daughter's 17 and one of her friends, and my son is reciting facts about the film to them. Like he did his own research, and he's like, well, when the blood came out and they didn't know it was coming. And I'm like, how do you know that? So yeah, I do like good horror movies as well, just so you know.
Oh, no, I know. I've listened to your show. I've listened to you guys for a while now. I've been listening. So
that's awesome. Thank you.
I kind of know who you guys are. And I try to, but like I said, I know Joshua likes those movies, and I just had to pick one a little bit. Just a little bit,
I mean, he says he likes good films, but then we just did our top 10s of 2020. And then that might be a little bit debatable, but
they were awesome. They were all really good.
I think you only had 2 films that me and Dave had on our list. So
yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
To be fair about it, though, there weren't a lot of films to come out in 2020 at all. So.
Oh, no, yeah.
Right. Yeah, it was a lot of lower budget ones.
What were some of your favorite films of 2020, since we're on that topic?
To be frank with you, I have not watched, like seriously, this last year, it has been so busy for me. Mm-hmm. I have really had no time to watch anything. And really, for me, it was me sitting down with my sons. I'd pick like one of my kids and say, okay, we're going to watch this tonight. So I have a son who's 17, but he was 16 at the time. I said, you've never watched Fright Night. It's one of my favorite films. Let's sit down and watch Fright Night.
Yeah.
And my older son, Logan, we've watched The Thing or the prequel so many times, because we can just sit down and just watch it. And because we both love that movie, the concept so much, we can do that. I just have not had time. And now, like I say, we got kicked out of the funeral home because we were living at the funeral home. So we had to move in November, and December was us getting into the house. We had everything. It's still torn apart. I mean, like my house is just nothing but boxes to this day. We have not had time to do anything, but I just started watching. So I was like, man, like I said, I watched, Ready or Not, and I'm going to get You're Next. And, so I've got movies that now I'm watching. I just watched The Mortuary Collection.
Oh, cool. On Shudder. Yep.
Yeah. And it was okay. I liked the first story better than anything. I think it was great, but of course it was Lovecraftian to me. That's what it said. But it didn't really have much other than here's what happens. And so I was kind of like a little disappointed with it. I wanted a little bit more with it. Yeah. And the others were okay. But I loved the fight between the babysitter and the guy in the house. That was like utterly brilliant. A great battle. I was like, man, this is just awesome. I would love to see this with like Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers or something, like somebody do this to them,
Yeah.
Leatherface, kick Leatherface's ass. So, that's just the way it is. I haven't really had a chance to watch anything until now. And I was wondering if you had checked out Color Out of Space, just as a Lovecraft fan. I have started it. I had started it and have not had a chance to watch it. Like it literally just started for me, and then I have been pulled away from watching.
Yeah,
I have younger kids, and of course, our house now the TV's in a place where it resonates. So when they go to bed, I can't watch anything until about 11 or 11:30, and I'm not.
Yeah, make sure they're asleep.
Yep, and now I'm like, can't stay up past long.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
No, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's one of those things. Like, I'm a big Nick Cage fan.
Yeah.
You know, his vampires. It was a Vampire's Kiss or Kiss of the Vampire. Just a brilliant film. Brilliant performance by him. You know, so I like Nick Cage in a lot of stuff. Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear what you think. It did make my top 10. I think it was like number 10 on my list, possibly. It was decent. I think I had higher expectations for it going into it, but it was a good film. He goes full Nick Cage at some point. Not Mandy Nick Cage, but he does his Nick Cage thing.
I did watch something I liked. That was The Ritual. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
On Netflix, I think.
Yes, yeah. Where they go out in the woods and then they have the
that's a cool film.
There at the end. It was really good. I liked that a lot. You know, it was better than I expected. I was like, oh, come on, here we go. And then I liked the slow burn and the sublime, and it worked really well. I thought it was really well done.
Yep, I agree. I enjoyed that film a lot. Hey, so Ray, as we wrap up, did you have anything you wanna plug as we of course, as we end this?
Yeah, of course, and thank you so much for letting me do that. Of course, I do have the Nightmare Game System out in NGS. That's available in Kindle, and it'll soon be on audiobook. And then I have Spider Bite, Radiant Gate Online, Spider Bite, the Webs of War series, which is coming out. And then, as Joshua's been very kind to say as well, I have the Blobs, Evil Oozes, Slimes, and other jellies that will be out. I don't know when. We're just getting it all taken care of now. We've got the cover done, and we've got everything back except for a few contracts. And that's the first book I've edited, so we'll see how that works out. But that's the upcoming thing for the next couple of months.
Very cool, man. Very cool. And I hope that you'll come back and join us at some point after a few other releases and kind of keep in contact with us.
Absolutely. You guys are great guys. And Joshua, anytime you want a book, let me know. I'm happy to hook you up, man.
Oh, you're the man.
So you just saved him that having to go to his wife and beg for the purchase to happen. So that is huge.
Well, I'm really looking forward to the Blob book.
And the only thing I ever ask is if anybody gets one of the books, out there, if they get it, just please leave a review on Amazon. I really need reviews. They kick in after so long. They put in, you may have a suggestion. Like, we also suggest if you've read this to get this.
Yeah.
So the reviews help. So Amazon reviews always help. So anybody that gets the Nightmare Game or, Spider Bite or even the Blob stuff or any of the other books that I have up, that's all I ask. Just be kind and leave a review. Even if you say I suck, just say I suck and just get me to review.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. We need the people to start leaving some reviews. So leave some on Amazon for Ray. Leave it on iTunes for us. Get them done.
Oh, so did you want to do
Josh sucks at closing up. He is the worst at this part. We cut this every single time. I always look to Josh because we each do our own turn of doing the wrap up, and whenever it's Josh's, it's the most awkward thing because he's like
We'll just do the same thing.
Let me ask you one more question.
Oh yeah.
See what I have to deal with, Ray? See, you get the edited version. When
Josh, just do a nice outro,
Right. You want to meet my wife? If you think this is bad, meet my wife sometime. Watch her.
Yeah. Hey, I don't know how it is in your house. I wear the pants in my house when my wife lets me. All right.
Wait, when she's not home, you mean?
Yeah. When she's not home, I get
the only time.
I don't even own pants anymore, to be honest with you. So.
Yeah.
You must have been married for a long time.
Yes, indeed. 5 kids and too long.
Bless you, man.
All right, so that was Raymond Johnson. Thank you so much for coming on. That's his pen name, Ray. You sent me a bunch of stories. Greatly appreciated. Definitely check out Nightmare Game System. That's out now. Check out all of his stuff. Make sure you leave some good reviews. He's got a great podcast. Awesome stories. Highly recommended. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
It's been my pleasure. You guys rock. I do listen to you all the time. Since I heard about you, I've listened to your back catalog, so I'm all caught up. So I enjoyed it. It was great meeting you all, and hopefully I'll be back sometime in the future.
Absolutely.
This is Brandon.
This is Dave.
This is Joshua.
This is Ray.
Have a good night.
Thanks for listening.
Get easy.